My Wright Brothers Field Trip by Charlie Mamlin. This is Charlie Mamlin from the Dayton Daily News, and I am going to do a special report on the birth of flight. Now follow me. Now we are at Carillon Park at the Wright Brothers Aviation Center. Let's go in and see what is inside. Well, here we have a replica of Wilbur and Orville Wright.
Hello. Orville and I want to welcome you to Carillon Historical.
This is a model of Orville and Wilbur next to their bike shop, and look how real it looks. Wilbur Wright was born on a farm near Millville, Indiana in 1867. This is Wilbur Wright when he was 12 years old. Orville Wright was born in Dayton, Ohio 4 years later in 1871. This is Orville when he was 8. Wilbur and Orville had talents doing things with machines and parts. They love to take things apart and see how they work and then put them back together again. The Wright brothers always said that they learned this from their mother, who enjoyed working with her hands. Even though their father wasn't very handy, he believed that the boys could accomplish anything if they worked hard enough and if they were determined. Wilbur and Orville became interested in flight with their gift their father gave them when Wilbur was 11 and Orville was 7. It was a toy helicopter made of wood, cork, bamboo, and paper. The boys experimented with their own designs of the toy, trying to figure out what made it fly. Neither Wilbur or Orville went to college. As young men, Orville and Wilbur worked as printers. They tried to make their newspaper, but it didn't sell very well. When they were young men, Wilbur and Orville both became crazy about cycling. People started coming to Wilbur and Orville for them to repair bikes for them. So the Wright brothers decided to start their own bicycle shop in 1892. During the time that the Wright brothers were making bikes, there was a lot of attention around the world for some men who were trying to create flying machines. Most of these were gliders, and all of them looked pretty silly to me. A man named Otto Lilienthal in Germany tried different designs of gliders and tried to fly over 2,000 times. Eventually, he died in a glider crash. Other inventors also tried and failed to fly. When Orville and Wilbur heard about Lilienthal's experiments and his dramatic death, they became excited about trying to fly themselves. In just a few years, these men were making history. It would take way too long to tell you about each step of the Wright brothers' experiments, but one thing I learned from this research is that it took many tries and failures for Wilbur and Orville to figure out flight. In the year 1900, they tried to fly a glider many times. At most, Wilbur was able to stay in the air for only 15 to 20 seconds, but they proved themselves that they had really figured out a way to control their glider. It was in 1902 in Kitty Hawk that Orville realized why the glider kept spinning out of control. He realized that they needed to make the tail movable, like a rudder to a boat or a bird's tail. That changed their design, and it worked. This is Wilbur flying on the Wright Flyer 3. This plane was the first plane to be controlled in the air. It had very weird gadgets on it to make it move. Wilbur had to move his left hand one way, his right hand another way, and even his hips back and forth to control the plane. I thought our tour guide, John, looked pretty silly when he was demonstrating Wilbur's movements.
But to fly this airplane, you gotta go, this is nose up and down, this is tail left and right, and then you gotta move the wingtips. So you really gotta be a good athlete to do all that.
Wow.
That's called the Wright Brothers Shuffle.
In 1904, the Wright brothers designed the Wright Flyer 2. They were improving their design, but it was hard to make quick progress. After many attempts, their flights became longer and more dependable. This was the year that they made a complete circular flight, landing back where they had started. In 1909, the Wright brothers were invited to New York to show off their flying machine. They were asked to fly over the Statue of Liberty and over the Hudson River. Here you can see the plane flying next to the Statue of Liberty. There was one problem. Wilbur was nervous because he couldn't swim. As you can see, they came up with a brilliant solution. They harnessed a red canoe into the bottom of the plane just in case of an emergency landing. That flight was watched by over 1 million New Yorkers. In 1912, Wilbur got typhoid fever and died. Some say that Orville was never quite the same after his brother died. He missed him terribly. The Wright brothers became so famous that Henry Ford, who invented the automobile, bought the Wright brothers' home in Dayton, Ohio, and moved it to his museum in Michigan. Orville lived until he was 76, dying in 1948. He lived to see his invention fly across the entire United States in 1923, and the first round-the-world flight in 1924. He even lived to see a plane fly faster than the speed of sound. Just 29 years after Orville's death, the American spacecraft Apollo 11 made the first landing on the moon. So, next time you're in a plane or you see a plane flying overhead, remember it all started from two curious boys, Orville and Wilbur Wright from Dayton, Ohio.